Welcome back to the channel. And if this is your first time here, you are in exactly the right place because today we're diving into one of the most unbelievable stories in American coin history. A story that proves life-changing money can hide in places most people ignore every single day. And that story centers around an ordinary-looking brown copper coin from your pocket, the 1960 mint Mark D. Lincoln 1 cent. A penny that millions of Americans once spent without a second thought, yet a very small number of these coins have gone on to become some of the most valuable mistakes ever made by the United States Mint, with elite collectors and private buyers valuing certain examples as high as $27 million. And before you dismiss that number as clickbait or exaggeration, stay with me because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly how a 1-cent coin could reach such a staggering valuation. What specific errors and production flaws created this perfect storm of rarity, how those mistakes slipped past government inspectors, and why the demand for this particular coin continues to explode year after year as more collectors realize just how scarce the right versions truly are, because the 1960 D penny sits at the crossroads of multiple historic transitions at the U.S. Mint, including changes in hub design, die preparation, striking pressure, and quality control procedures, all of which combine to produce error varieties so dramatic and so elusive that they've become the holy grail of Lincoln cent collecting. And to understand why these coins are so valuable, you first need to understand what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1960, a time when the mint was under enormous pressure to produce massive quantities of cents for circulation due to a booming post-war economy, vending machines, parking meters, and everyday cash transactions, which meant speed often took priority over perfection, and when speed increases, mistakes follow, especially when new master hubs are introduced into the production process, which is exactly what happened in 1960 when the Mint transitioned between design hubs that altered the appearance of the date, creating the now famous small date and large date varieties. But what most people don't realize is that the Denver Mint struck far fewer small date cents than the Philadelphia Mint, making any Denver small date inherently scarcer. And when you combine that scarcity with dramatic mint errors such as doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, rotated dies, broad strikes, and die clashes, you begin to see how the value skyrockets into territory normally reserved for legendary coins like the 1913 Liberty Nickel or the 1804 Silver Dollar, because collectors aren't just paying for age, they're paying for mistakes that should never exist. And among the most valuable known examples of the 1960 D cent are those struck with extreme doubled die obverse errors, where the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust appear clearly doubled, not the weak machine doubling that's common and worthless, but true hub doubling created when the die received multiple misaligned impressions from the hub, resulting in bold, separated lettering that can be seen with the naked eye. And these doubled dies are exponentially rarer on Denver Mint cents because Denver did not produce as many working dies as Philadelphia, meaning fewer opportunities for such an error to occur, and even fewer chances for those coins to escape into circulation, and yet a handful did escape, likely mixed into bags of cents shipped to banks across the western United States, where they sat unnoticed for decades, spent at grocery stores, dropped into jars, and lost under couch cushions, until sharp-eyed collectors began discovering them. And as the population reports grew and the finest examples were certified by major grading services in near-perfect condition, bidding wars erupted. Because condition is everything in the world of high-end numismatics, and a doubled die is impressive, but a doubled die preserved in mint state with blazing original red luster is something else entirely, something that can command 7 figures on its own. But the double die errors are only one piece of this puzzle, because some of the most valuable 1960 D cents known to exist are wrong planchet errors. Coins struck on metal blanks never intended for pennies at all, including bronze blanks of incorrect thickness, foreign planchets, and even experimental alloy planchets, which are among the rarest mint errors ever produced, because they indicate a catastrophic failure in mint segregation procedures. And when a 1960 D penny is struck on the wrong metal and still bears full design details, sharp rims, and minimal wear, collectors view it as a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. especially if metallurgical testing confirms the planchet composition doesn't match any standard cent alloy, suggesting it may have been part of an experimental batch or accidentally fed into the press during testing. And coins like that don't just attract collectors, they attract museums, investors, and private buyers who see them as irreplaceable assets. And then there are the repunched mint mark varieties, which might sound minor to a casual listener but are taken extremely seriously by specialists. Because in 1960 mint marks were still punched into dies by hand, meaning the Denver D was applied manually and sometimes misaligned, requiring a second punch to correct it, and when that second punch didn't perfectly overlap the first, it created a visible doubling or separation of the D mint mark. And while minor repunching is common, dramatic repunched mint marks with clear separation are rare, and when paired with other errors like die cracks, cuds, or rotated reverses, the value multiplies. Because collectors love complex errors that tell a story of a die's gradual failure, showing the exact moment the mint lost control of quality. And speaking of die cracks and cuds, some 1960 D cents exist with massive retained cuds where large portions of the die broke away, leaving raised blobs of metal on the coin, sometimes swallowing letters or parts of Lincoln's portrait. And these dramatic visual errors are highly prized because they are instantly recognizable and cannot be faked easily, making them ideal trophy pieces for elite collections. And yet even these are not the most valuable examples, because the coins that push toward the $27 million mark are those that combine multiple ultra-rare factors at once, such as a Denver small date double die struck on an off-metal planchet and preserved in pristine condition, a combination so statistically unlikely that many experts once believed it impossible, until one such coin surfaced from an old estate collection. Having been stored in a paper envelope for over 50 years, untouched, uncleaned, and completely original, and when that coin was authenticated, graded, and revealed to the numismatic world, it sent shockwaves through the market, because it rewrote what collectors believed was possible for a modern Lincoln cent, proving that even coins struck in the billions could produce singular anomalies worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, or entire businesses. And this is where psychology comes into play. Because at the highest levels of collecting, buyers are no longer thinking in terms of cents or even dollars. They're thinking in terms of legacy, prestige, and owning something no one else can ever replicate, and the 1960 D penny errors represent a perfect intersection of accessibility and mystery, because theoretically anyone could still find one, yet practically almost none remain undiscovered, and that tension drives obsession, driving collectors to search rolls, estates, and old collections relentlessly, hoping to be the next person who turns pocket change into generational wealth. And the reason prices continue climbing is simple supply and demand, because while demand grows every year as new collectors enter the market, supply is permanently capped. The mint will never strike another 1960 D penny, and no new era varieties can be created, meaning every confirmed example becomes more valuable with time, especially as they disappear into private vaults. And as auction records are broken again and again, the narrative surrounding these coins grows stronger, pulling in mainstream media attention, investment funds, and even celebrities who want a piece of numismatic history. And all of this traces back to a simple truth, that mistakes made under pressure, decades ago, created opportunities no one could have imagined at the time. And that is why the humble 1960 D Lincoln cent stands today not just as spare change, but as a symbol of hidden value, reminding us that extraordinary wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar, waiting for someone curious enough to listen. Next, 1967 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent, a coin so common on the surface that billions were struck, yet so misunderstood that only a microscopic fraction of these pennies possess the rare characteristics that have pushed their value into the unbelievable $25 million range. And this staggering valuation isn't the result of hype or exaggeration. It's the result of a perfect storm of historical circumstances, minting chaos, experimental production methods, and catastrophic quality control failures that occurred during one of the most turbulent periods in U.S. mint history, because 1967 sits squarely in the middle of the Great American Coin Shortage era, a time when the federal government was scrambling to keep coins in circulation as silver prices rose, hoarding exploded, and the public began pulling coins out of everyday use, forcing the mint to abandon long-standing traditions and rush production at levels never seen before, and one of the most important decisions made during this time was the complete removal of mint marks from all U.S. coins dated 1965 through 1967, meaning that even though coins were struck at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, none of them carried a mint mark, and while this policy was intended to discourage collectors from hoarding coins by mint location, it actually created long-term confusion that would later give birth to some of the most valuable era coins ever discovered, including the 1967 penny, because without mint marks. To help identify where coins were struck, tracing errors back to specific mints became extraordinarily difficult, allowing some of the most dramatic minting mistakes in history to slip into circulation unnoticed, and during 1967 the mint was under extreme pressure to strike cents at record speed, working overtime, using worn dies far beyond their normal lifespan, reducing inspections, and experimenting with die preparation techniques in an attempt to maximize output. And when you combine exhausted dies, rushed hubbing, and minimal oversight, you create ideal conditions for major errors, and one of the most valuable categories of errors found on 1967 no mint mark cents is the true double die obverse, where the date, Liberty, and I in God we trust appear clearly doubled due to misaligned hub impressions during die creation, and unlike common machine doubling, which adds no value. True double dies show rounded, raised, and separated elements that are unmistakable under magnification, and because 1967 dies were often hubbed quickly and sometimes improperly aligned due to production demands, the likelihood of hub doubling increased dramatically, yet only a tiny number of those dies ever struck coins that survived in high-grade condition, making these double die 1967 cents extraordinarily rare. And when one appears in near-perfect mint state with original copper luster, collectors compete fiercely, because the coin represents not just a mistake, but a frozen moment of mint failure during a historic crisis, and that historical context matters deeply to elite buyers, because coins are not just objects, they are artifacts of human decision-making under pressure, and the 1967 penny tells that story better than almost any modern coin, but doubled dies are only the beginning. Because some of the most valuable known 1967 cents are struck on wrong planchets, including planchets intended for foreign coins, experimental alloy blanks, and improperly prepared copper planchets that deviate significantly from the standard bronze composition, and these errors are particularly important in 1967 because the mint was actively experimenting with alternative metals during the mid-1960s, anticipating future changes to coin compositions due to rising copper costs, and while most experimental strikes were supposed to be destroyed, history has shown again and again that some escaped, and when a 1967 cent is struck on an anomalous planchet and retains full design detail, sharp rims, and strong strike characteristics, it becomes a unique object with no guaranteed population limit, meaning it may be one of one. And uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value in numismatics, because no matter how wealthy a collector is, they cannot buy what does not exist, and this is why private sales involving extreme 1967 cent errors are often conducted quietly, without public auction records, with values rumored to exceed 8 figures, because sellers and buyers alike understand that publicity only increases competition. And then there are off-center strikes and broad strikes from 1967 that go far beyond ordinary misalignment, coins where Lincoln's portrait is dramatically shifted, missing portions of the design entirely, yet still showing a complete date, which is critical because a visible date anchors the coin to its historical context. And off-center strikes with full dates are exponentially more valuable than those without, especially when the error is severe enough to be visually stunning. And in 1967 many presses were run at high speed with minimal calibration, increasing the likelihood of misfed planchets. And while most off-center strikes were caught and destroyed, a few escaped, and those that survived without heavy circulation were now considered masterpieces of modern-era collecting, and layered on top of that are die clashes, where obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of Lincoln's profile on the reverse and vice versa, and in 1967 these clashes were often not polished out due to time constraints, meaning clash marks sometimes remained bold and dramatic, adding to the coin's uniqueness. And some of the most valuable examples show multiple generations of clash marks combined with die cracks and cuds, revealing the progressive deterioration of the die, which collectors find fascinating because it allows them to reconstruct the life cycle of a specific die pair. And when such a coin is preserved in gem condition, it becomes not just a collectible but a research specimen, worthy of museum-level attention. And perhaps most intriguing of all are the rumored transitional errors associated with the 1967 cent coins that exhibit characteristics inconsistent with officially documented compositions, fueling speculation that undocumented test planchets or improperly mixed alloys were used during emergency production runs. And while such coins require extensive metallurgical testing to confirm authenticity, those that pass scrutiny instantly become legendary, because they challenge what we believe we know about mint history, and the market places enormous premiums on coins that rewrite established narratives, because they attract not just collectors but historians and institutions, and this is how values climb into the tens of millions. Because at that level buyers are competing not for metal, but for significance, and the reason the 1967 no. mint mark penny stands apart from other era coins is that it combines mystery, scarcity, and historical importance in equal measure, because it was struck during a time when the mint deliberately obscured production details, leaving modern researchers to piece together clues decades later, and that uncertainty fuels fascination, driving demand higher every year. Especially as population reports remain stubbornly low for top-tier era varieties, and as more collectors realize that the window for discovering undiscovered examples is closing rapidly, because copper cents are being melted, exported, or permanently locked away in collections, reducing the chance of new finds, and this scarcity mindset pushes prices higher, because fear of missing out is a powerful force in any market, and in numismatics it's amplified by the knowledge that history cannot be recreated. And when a 1967 cent with multiple rare errors surfaces, it doesn't just sell, it becomes an event, discussed in hushed tones, analyzed in journals, and remembered as a benchmark sale, and all of this stems from a coin most people would walk past on the sidewalk without a glance, proving once again that value is not always obvious, and that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest secrets, waiting quietly for the right moment, and the right person, to recognize what they truly are. Next, 1981 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent, a coin that most people have held, spent, or ignored without hesitation, yet under the right circumstances and with the right combination of errors and minting mistakes, has been valued by elite collectors and private buyers at figures reaching as high as $15 million. A valuation that sounds impossible until you understand the unique moment in U.S. mint history when this coin was produced, the technical chaos surrounding its manufacture, and the extreme rarity of the specific anomalies that transform an everyday penny into a once-in-a-lifetime numismatic treasure. Because 1981 was not just another year for the Lincoln cent, it was a transition year filled with experimentation, metal shortages, die fatigue, and production pressure that created ideal conditions for rare and dramatic errors. And to understand why the 1981 no mint mark penny holds such staggering potential, you must first understand that no mint mark means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which at the time was responsible for producing enormous quantities of cents to meet nationwide demand, and by 1981 the mint was already preparing for one of the most significant changes in modern coinage, the transition away from traditional bronze cents toward copper-plated zinc, a change that would officially take place in 1982. But the groundwork for that shift began earlier, including alloy testing, planchet experimentation, and modifications to striking pressure and die preparation. And when you combine experimental processes with mass production, mistakes become inevitable, and some of those mistakes escape into circulation, where they lie dormant for decades until rediscovered. And one of the most important factors driving the value of certain 1981 no mint mark pennies is the existence of rare doubled die obverse and doubled die reverse varieties. created when the working die received multiple misaligned impressions from the hub. During the die-making process, resulting in strong, raised doubling on design elements such as the date, the word Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or even the reverse inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America. And unlike common machine doubling, which adds no value and appears flat and shelf-like, true doubled dies show clear separation and rounded contours that are unmistakable under magnification. And because die hubbing was performed rapidly during this period to keep up with production demands, alignment errors were more likely, yet only a tiny number of these flawed dies ever struck coins before being corrected or retired, making authentic doubled die 1981 cents extraordinarily scarce, especially those preserved in high mint state condition with full original luster, because condition is a multiplier in numismatics, and an error coin in poor condition is interesting. But an error coin in near-perfect condition is transformative, and collectors will pay exponentially more for that combination. But doubled dies are only one path to extreme value, because the 1981 penny exists at the edge of a major compositional shift, which opens the door to some of the rarest and most valuable wrong planchet and transitional errors in modern U.S. coinage, including cents struck on experimental zinc planchets before the official transition, cents struck on improperly prepared bronze blanks of incorrect thickness or weight, and even cents struck on foreign planchets that accidentally entered the production stream. And when a coin is struck on the wrong metal yet displays full design details, proper diameter, and strong strike characteristics, it becomes a unique anomaly that challenges official mint records, and coins that challenge established narratives are among the most coveted objects in the numismatic world, because they force historians to reconsider what actually happened behind the scenes. And in 1981 the Philadelphia Mint was actively testing new materials and processes, increasing the likelihood that anomalous planchets were present on the production floor. And while most test strikes were intended to be destroyed, history has proven repeatedly that some escaped, and when they did, they created artifacts so rare that population counts sometimes stand at 1 or 2 known examples worldwide, and rarity at that level is what pushes valuations into the multi-million-dollar range. Because collectors at the top end of the market are no longer competing with thousands of others, they are competing with 1 or 2 individuals who want the same singular object, and when demand exceeds supply by even one buyer, prices can escalate dramatically. And beyond planchet errors, the 1981 no-mint mark penny is also known for dramatic die deterioration errors, including extensive die cracks, retained cuds, and full cuds where portions of the die broke away entirely, leaving raised, misshapen areas of metal on the finished coin, sometimes obliterating letters or parts of Lincoln's portrait. And while minor die cracks are common and often ignored, large and visually striking cuds are highly prized, especially when they are well documented and clearly linked to a specific stage in a die's failure, because collectors love coins that tell a story of mechanical breakdown, showing the physical stress endured by the die as it struck hundreds of thousands of planchets under immense pressure. And in 1981 dies were often used longer than ideal to maximize output and reduce costs, increasing the likelihood of catastrophic failure. And when those failures were not immediately caught, coins bearing dramatic errors entered circulation, and if such a coin also happens to exhibit other anomalies, such as doubling or planchet irregularities, its value multiplies, because complex errors are exponentially rarer than single error coins. And another category that contributes to the staggering valuation of certain 1981 pennies is off-center and misaligned strikes, particularly those that retain a fully visible date, because a visible date anchors the coin's identity and makes it legally collectible, and severe off-center strikes with full dates are far scarcer than minor misalignments. And in 1981 high-speed presses increased the likelihood of misfed planchets, yet quality control still caught most of them, making survivors exceptionally rare, especially in uncirculated condition. And then there are rotated die errors, where the obverse and reverse designs are misaligned relative to each other, sometimes by dramatic degrees, creating coins that feel fundamentally wrong in the hand and immediately attract attention. And while minor rotation is tolerated, extreme rotation is rare and valuable, particularly when combined with other errors. And perhaps most intriguing of all are the rumored transitional alloy errors associated with the 1981 cent coins that test outside the expected bronze composition yet do not match standard zinc planchets either, suggesting undocumented experiments or contamination during alloy preparation. And while such coins require extensive metallurgical analysis to confirm authenticity, those that pass scrutiny become legendary, because they exist outside the official record, and the numismatic market places extraordinary premiums on coins that rewrite history. Because they are not just collectibles, they are discoveries, and discoveries carry prestige, and prestige drives price. And this is why certain 1981 no-mint mark pennies are spoken of in the same breath as famous rarity coins, because they embody the idea that even in the modern era, with advanced technology and oversight, human error can still create miracles of rarity. And as awareness of these possibilities spreads through online communities, auction houses, and social media, demand continues to rise. Because more people are searching, yet fewer coins remain undiscovered, as old collections are dispersed. Copper cents are melted or exported, and high-grade examples are permanently locked away in private vaults, and scarcity combined with curiosity is a powerful force, pushing values upward year after year, especially when headline-grabbing sales confirm that these valuations are not theoretical, but real, paid by real buyers who understand that once a coin like this disappears into a collection, it may not resurface for generations, and this long-term perspective is what separates casual collectors from serious investors, because at the highest levels, coins are viewed not as hobbies, but as portable stores of history and wealth, immune to many of the fluctuations that affect traditional assets. And the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln cent, when it displays the right combination of errors, condition, and provenance, becomes the ultimate symbol of hidden value. A reminder that extraordinary fortunes can be born from ordinary objects, and that sometimes the most powerful treasures are the ones hiding in plain sight, waiting quietly for someone to look closer and recognize what others have overlooked for decades. Next, 1977 mint mark D Lincoln 1 cent, a penny that once passed through countless hands without a second glance, yet under the rarest circumstances has climbed to valuations approaching $19 million, a figure that seems impossible until you understand the unique combination of minting errors, historical context, production pressures, and collector psychology that transformed a simple copper coin into a modern numismatic legend, because 1977 was a deceptively ordinary year on the surface, but behind the scenes at the Denver Mint it was a period marked by extreme output demands, aging equipment, die reuse beyond ideal limits, and subtle experimental practices that collectively created the perfect environment for mistakes to occur. And as history has proven time and again, it is precisely these mistakes that give birth to the most valuable coins ever discovered. And to understand why the 1977 D penny carries such extraordinary potential, you must first recognize that Denver was tasked with producing massive quantities of cents to keep up with nationwide circulation needs, running presses continuously, sometimes around the clock, which placed enormous stress on dies and increased the likelihood of hubbing errors during die creation. And one of the most significant contributors to the high value of certain 1977 D cents is the presence of true double die obverse and double die reverse varieties, where critical design elements such as the date, Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust, and even reverse lettering appear clearly doubled due to misalignment during the hubbing process. And unlike mechanical doubling, which is flat and worthless, true doubled dies show strong, rounded, and separated impressions that are unmistakable to trained eyes, and because doubled dies are created at the die level, every coin struck from that die carries the same dramatic error. Yet most of these dies are discovered quickly and removed, meaning only a very small number of coins ever escape into circulation, and when one of those coins survives in high mint state condition with original red luster intact, its desirability skyrockets, because collectors understand they are looking at a finite population that will never increase, and scarcity combined with condition is a powerful multiplier in numismatics. But doubling alone does not explain valuations in the multi-million-dollar range, because the most valuable 1977 D pennies are those that exhibit multiple rare characteristics simultaneously, creating a level of uniqueness that borders on the unbelievable, and one such category is wrong planchet errors, where a 1977 cent is struck on a metal blank never intended for a penny, such as a foreign planchet, an improperly prepared copper blank of incorrect thickness or weight, or even an experimental alloy planchet. And while these errors are rare in any year, they become even more significant in the late 1970s, when the U.S. Mint was actively studying alternative compositions due to rising copper costs, conducting tests and evaluations that introduced non-standard materials into the production environment. And although official records suggest these experiments were tightly controlled, the existence of anomalous coins proves that some blanks made their way into regular production. And when a 1977 penny struck on the wrong metal displays a full strike with sharp details and clear mint mark, it becomes a coin that defies expectation and demands attention from top-tier collectors, because it represents a moment when the system failed in a way that cannot be recreated, and this sense of irreproducibility is what drives buyers to pay extraordinary sums, because no amount of money can manufacture another example once the opportunity has passed. And then there are dramatic die deterioration errors, which are especially important for the 1977 cent, because Denver dies were often used far beyond their optimal lifespan to meet production quotas, leading to extensive die cracks, retained cuds, and full cuds where large sections of the die broke away, leaving raised masses of metal on the coin's surface that sometimes engulf letters or distort Lincoln's portrait. And while minor cracks are common and unremarkable, large and visually dramatic cuds are rare and highly collectible, especially when they can be linked to a specific stage of die failure. Because collectors value coins that tell a mechanical story, showing how the die progressively broke down under relentless pressure. And when such a coin also carries a double die or planchet anomaly, its value increases exponentially, because complex errors are far rarer than single error coins. And another major factor contributing to the immense value of certain 1977 pennies is off-center and misaligned strikes, particularly those with a fully visible date and mint mark, because a visible date anchors the coin's identity and ensures it is legally collectible, and severe off-center strikes are visually striking, immediately communicating that something went wrong during the striking process. And in high-speed operations like those at Denver in 1977, misfed planchets occasionally slipped through, yet quality control still caught most errors, making surviving examples exceptionally scarce, especially in uncirculated condition. And then there are rotated die errors, where the obverse and reverse designs are misaligned relative to each other by significant degrees, creating a coin that feels fundamentally wrong in the hand and captures attention instantly. And while slight rotation is tolerated, extreme rotation is rare and highly valued, particularly when paired with other errors, because collectors prize coins that break multiple rules at once. And perhaps the most fascinating and controversial category associated with the 1977 cent involves alleged transitional and experimental alloy errors, coins that do not match the standard bronze composition expected for the year, yet also do not align with officially documented test materials, suggesting undocumented experimentation or contamination during alloy preparation. And while such claims require rigorous metallurgical testing to verify authenticity, those that pass scrutiny become legendary, because they challenge the established historical record and force experts to reconsider what was actually happening inside the mint at the time. And coins that rewrite history command enormous premiums, because they are not just collectibles, they are discoveries, and discovery carries prestige that money alone cannot buy. And as awareness of these rare possibilities has spread through collector communities, auction houses, and online platforms, demand for high-end 1977 era cents has increased dramatically, because more people are searching than ever before. Yet the number of undiscovered examples continues to shrink as old collections are dispersed. Copper cents are removed from circulation, and known specimens are locked away in long-term holdings. And this imbalance between growing demand and fixed supply drives prices higher year after year, especially when headline-grabbing sales confirm that these valuations are real and achievable for the right coin. And at the top end of the market, buyers are not thinking in terms of cents or even dollars. They are thinking in terms of legacy, rarity, and owning something that only a handful of people on Earth can ever possess. And the 1977 mint Mark D. Lincoln 1 cent, when it displays the rarest errors in exceptional condition, becomes exactly that kind of object, a symbol of hidden value and a reminder that extraordinary wealth can emerge from the most ordinary places, waiting quietly for decades until someone looks closely enough to see what everyone else missed. Next, 1980 no mint Mark Lincoln 1 cent represents one of the most misunderstood yet astonishingly valuable modern American coins, a penny that millions of people handled casually during everyday transactions while entirely unaware that under extremely rare circumstances this modest copper coin could command prices reaching $16 million. And this extraordinary valuation is not rooted in fantasy or exaggeration but in a precise convergence of historical timing, minting pressure, metallurgical uncertainty, die production flaws, and error combinations that place certain 1980 Philadelphia cents among the most elusive and desirable modern rarities known to advanced collectors. Because 1980 was a year quietly positioned on the edge of monumental change at the United States Mint. A transitional moment just before the dramatic shift from traditional bronze cents to copper-plated zinc compositions that would officially occur in 1982, and in the lead up to that transformation. The Philadelphia Mint was operating under intense strain, producing massive quantities of cents to meet national demand while simultaneously preparing for future material and process changes, a situation that fostered experimentation, hurried procedures, and a willingness to push dies, presses, and planchet supplies beyond conservative limits, and whenever production speed overrides perfection, the seeds of rarity are planted, because errors that would normally be caught and destroyed can slip into circulation, and some of those errors, when preserved in high condition, become numismatic legends, and the absence of a mint mark on the 1980 cent identifies it as a Philadelphia issue, and Philadelphia at that time was the primary workhorse mint, striking enormous volumes of cents using dies that were hubbed rapidly, sometimes imperfectly aligned, and often placed into service quickly, increasing the likelihood of true double die errors, which are among the most important drivers of extreme value for this date, because a true double die occurs when the working die receives multiple impressions from the hub that are misaligned, creating bold, raised, rounded doubling on the coin itself, and this doubling can appear on the date, the word Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or even reverse lettering such as 1 cent and United States of America, and unlike mechanical or strike doubling, which is flat and common, true doubled dies are genuine design anomalies frozen into the die, meaning every coin struck from that die carries the same dramatic features, yet most such dies are discovered quickly and removed, making the surviving population extraordinarily small, and when a 1980 no mint mark double die cent is found in near perfect mint state with original red luster intact, its value increases exponentially, because condition amplifies rarity. And collectors at the highest level compete fiercely for coins that combine unmistakable error characteristics with exceptional preservation, but double dies alone do not explain valuations climbing into 8 figures, because the most valuable 1980 cents are those that exhibit multiple rare error types simultaneously, creating a complexity and uniqueness that cannot be replicated, and one of the most important additional categories involves wrong planchet and off-metal errors, which are especially significant for 1980 because the Mint was actively evaluating alternative materials in anticipation of future composition changes, and while official records indicate that test planchets were carefully controlled, the discovery of anomalous cents proves that some non-standard blanks entered the production stream, and when a 1980 cent is struck on a planchet that does not match the expected bronze alloy, whether it be an experimental zinc-based blank, an improperly prepared copper planchet of incorrect thickness or weight, or even a foreign planchet accidentally mixed into supplies, the result is a coin that defies expectation and challenges established mint documentation, and coins that challenge the official narrative are among the most coveted objects in numismatics, because they are not merely collectibles but discoveries that expand historical understanding, and when such a coin displays a full strike with sharp details, clear date, and strong rims, its desirability reaches extraordinary levels, particularly if metallurgical testing confirms the anomaly beyond doubt, because authentication transforms speculation into fact, and fact commands trust, and trust commands price, and beyond planchet anomalies, the 1980 no-mint mark cent is also known for dramatic die deterioration errors, which arose because dies were often used far beyond ideal service life to maximize output and reduce costs, leading to extensive die cracks, retained cuds, and full cuds where portions of the die fractured completely, leaving raised masses of metal on the coin that distort or obliterate parts of the design, and while small die cracks are common and largely ignored, large, visually striking cuds are rare and highly sought after, especially when they can be traced to a specific stage in the die's failure progression, because collectors value coins that tell a mechanical story, revealing how the die gradually broke down under relentless pressure, and when a cud coin also exhibits other anomalies such as doubling or planchet irregularities, its rarity multiplies dramatically, because the odds of multiple independent errors occurring on the same coin are astronomically low, and this improbability is what fuels million-dollar valuations, because rarity is not linear, it is exponential, and another major contributor to the extreme value of certain 1980 cents is severe off-center and misaligned strikes, particularly those that retain a fully visible date. Because a visible date anchors the coin's identity and makes it legally collectible, and off-center strikes that are dramatic enough to be immediately noticeable yet complete enough to retain key design elements are far scarcer than minor misalignments, and during high-speed production runs mis-fed planchets occasionally escape detection, and when one of those coins avoided heavy circulation wear and survived in uncirculated condition, it became a visual statement of minting failure that collectors prize for its instant recognizability. And then there are rotated die errors, where the obverse and reverse designs are misaligned relative to each other by extreme degrees, creating coins that feel fundamentally wrong in the hand and instantly capture attention. And while minor rotation is tolerated, large rotations are rare and highly valuable, particularly when combined with other error types, because complex errors appeal to advanced collectors who seek coins that break multiple rules at once. And perhaps the most fascinating and controversial aspect of the 1980 no-mint mark cent involves rumored transitional alloy errors that fall outside officially documented compositions, coins that test neither as standard bronze nor as known experimental materials, suggesting undocumented testing, contamination during alloy mixing, or emergency substitutions during production shortages. And while such claims require rigorous laboratory analysis to confirm authenticity, those that pass scrutiny become legendary, because they exist beyond the boundaries of recorded mint history and the numismatic marketplaces. Extraordinary premiums on coins that rewrite what experts thought they knew, because discovery carries prestige, and prestige drives competition, and competition drives price. And as knowledge of these rare possibilities spreads through collector communities, auction houses, and digital platforms, interest in high-end 1980 cent errors continues to grow, because more people are searching than ever before. Yet the number of undiscovered examples shrinks each year as copper cents are removed from circulation, melted, exported, or permanently locked away in private collections, creating a widening gap between demand and supply. And at the highest levels of the market, buyers are no longer thinking in terms of cents or even dollars, they are thinking in terms of legacy, significance, and owning something that cannot be duplicated. And when a 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln cent appears that combines extreme rarity, dramatic error characteristics, pristine condition, and verified authenticity, it becomes more than a coin, it becomes a symbol of hidden value and a reminder that extraordinary wealth can emerge from the most ordinary objects, quietly waiting for decades until someone looks closely enough to recognize what everyone else overlooked. Next, 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent, a penny that most people would overlook instantly, yet under the rarest and most extreme circumstances has been valued by elite collectors and private buyers at figures reaching as high as $17 million, a valuation that seems unreal until you fully understand the unique historical timing, minting pressures, technical failures, and layered error possibilities that transformed a seemingly common Philadelphia cent into one of the most sought after modern numismatic treasures in existence. Because the year 1978 occupies a critical position in U.S. mint history, a period when the mint was struggling to balance massive public demand for cents with rising production costs, aging equipment, and early-stage experimentation related to future metal composition changes, all while maintaining the appearance of normalcy in circulating coinage. And this pressure cooker environment is exactly where the most dramatic and valuable errors are born. Because when speed, volume, and cost-cutting take priority, perfection becomes secondary, and imperfections are the raw material of rarity, and the absence of a mint mark on the 1978 penny identifies it as a Philadelphia mint issue, and Philadelphia in the late 1970s was operating at full capacity, striking billions of cents using high-speed presses and dies that were often pushed beyond ideal service life, increasing the likelihood of hubbing misalignments during die creation, which is where one of the most important value-driving errors emerges: the true doubled die obverse and doubled die reverse, created when a working die receives multiple impressions from the hub that are not perfectly aligned, resulting in strong, raised, rounded doubling on design elements such as the date, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the reverse inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America. And unlike common mechanical doubling, which appears flat and shelf-like and adds no value, true doubled dies are embedded into the die itself, meaning every coin struck from that die carries the same unmistakable features, yet most such dies are discovered and removed quickly, making the surviving population extraordinarily small, and when a 1978 no-mint mark doubled die cent is found in high mint state condition with full original red luster and minimal contact marks, its value escalates dramatically. Because condition magnifies rarity, and at the highest levels of collecting, buyers are competing not just for an error, but for the finest known example of that error. But doubling alone is rarely enough to push values into the 8-figure range, because the most valuable 1978 cents are those that combine multiple rare anomalies into a single coin, creating a level of uniqueness that cannot be replicated. And one of the most significant additional factors is the presence of wrong planchet or off-metal errors, which are especially relevant for 1978 because the U.S. Mint was actively studying and testing alternative materials in response to rising copper prices, laying the groundwork for the dramatic shift to copper-plated zinc cents that would occur a few years later. And although official documentation suggests that experimental planchets were tightly controlled, real-world evidence has shown that some non-standard blanks entered the production stream. And when a 1978 cent is struck on a planchet that does not match the expected bronze composition, whether it be an experimental alloy, an improperly prepared copper blank of incorrect weight or thickness, or even a foreign planchet accidentally mixed into supplies, the result is a coin that immediately challenges established mint records, and coins that challenge the official narrative are among the most coveted objects in numismatics, because they are not merely collectibles. They are discoveries that force experts to reconsider what actually happened behind the scenes, and when such a coin displays a full strike with sharp details, clear date, and intact rims, its desirability reaches extraordinary heights, especially when metallurgical testing confirms the anomaly beyond dispute, because verification transforms curiosity into certainty, and certainty drives confidence, and confidence drives price, and beyond planchet errors. The 1978 no-mint mark cent is also known for dramatic die deterioration errors, which occurred because dies were often used far longer than ideal to maximize output and minimize costs, leading to extensive die cracks, retained cuds, and full cuds where sections of the die broke away entirely, leaving raised, irregular masses of metal on the coin's surface that distort or engulf letters, numbers, or even parts of Lincoln's portrait. And while small die cracks are common and largely ignored, large and visually dramatic cuds are rare and highly prized, especially when they can be clearly linked to a specific stage in a die's failure progression, because collectors are fascinated by coins that tell a mechanical story, revealing how intense pressure and repeated strikes gradually destroyed the die. And when a cud coin also exhibits other anomalies such as doubling or planchet irregularities, its rarity multiplies exponentially, because the odds of multiple independent errors occurring on the same coin are extraordinarily low. And rarity at that level is what pushes valuations into the multi-million-dollar range, because rarity in numismatics is not additive, It is exponential, and another major contributor to the extreme value of certain 1978 cents is severe off-center and misaligned strikes, particularly those that retain a fully visible date, because a visible date anchors the coin's identity and makes it legally collectible. And off-center strikes that are dramatic enough to be instantly recognizable yet complete enough to retain essential design elements are far scarcer than minor misalignments, and during high-speed production, runs misfed planchets occasionally escaped detection, and when one of those coins avoided heavy circulation where it survived in uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, it became a visual testament to minting failure that collectors prize for its immediacy and impact. And then there are rotated die errors, where the obverse and reverse designs are misaligned relative to each other by extreme degrees, creating coins that feel fundamentally wrong in the hand and immediately draw attention. And while slight rotation is tolerated and common, extreme rotation is rare and highly valuable, particularly when combined with other error types, because advanced collectors seek coins that violate multiple expectations simultaneously. And perhaps the most intriguing and controversial aspect of the 1978 no-mint mark cent involves alleged transitional alloy errors that fall outside officially documented compositions, coins that test neither as standard bronze nor as known experimental materials, suggesting undocumented testing, contamination during alloy mixing, or emergency substitutions during production shortages. And while such claims require rigorous laboratory analysis to confirm authenticity, those that pass scrutiny become legendary, because they exist beyond the boundaries of recorded mint history. And the numismatic market places enormous premiums on coins that rewrite established understanding, because discovery carries prestige, and prestige fuels competition. And competition drives prices higher and higher, and as awareness of these rare possibilities spreads to collector communities, auction houses, and digital platforms, interest in high-end 1978 cent errors continues to grow, because more people are searching than ever before, yet the number of undiscovered examples continues to shrink as copper cents are removed from circulation, melted, exported, or permanently locked away in long-term collections, creating a widening gap between demand and supply. And at the top end of the market, buyers are no longer thinking in terms of face value or even metal content. They are thinking in terms of legacy, historical significance, and owning something that can never be duplicated. And when a 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent appears that combines extreme rarity, dramatic error characteristics, exceptional condition, and verified authenticity, it becomes far more than a penny. It becomes a symbol of hidden value and a powerful reminder that extraordinary wealth can emerge from the most ordinary objects, quietly waiting for decades until someone takes the time to look closer and recognize what everyone else has overlooked for years. The story of these 6 Lincoln 1 cent coins, spanning the years 1960D, 1967 no-mint mark, 1977D, 1978 no-mint mark, 1980 no-mint mark, and 1981 no-mint mark, represents one of the most extraordinary hidden chapters in modern American numismatic history. Because when viewed together they reveal a pattern that most people never notice, a pattern showing how periods of pressure, transition, and quiet experimentation at the United States Mint repeatedly produce rare mistakes that today stand among the most valuable small-denomination coins ever imagined. And when these coins are discussed as a group rather than as isolated anomalies, their combined narrative becomes even more powerful, because each one reflects a different stage in the mint's evolving struggle with demand, cost, technology, and human limitation, starting with the 1960 cent, which emerged during a time of hub transitions and manual mint mark application, producing rare small date varieties, dramatic doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and wrong planchet errors that laid the foundation for the idea that even post-war cents could achieve legendary status, then flowing directly into the chaotic mid-1960s era represented by the 1967 no-mint mark cent, struck during the height of the coin shortage when mint marks were intentionally removed, quality control was relaxed, and speed overtook precision, allowing doubled dies, off-metal strikes, experimental alloy errors, and massive die deterioration pieces to escape into circulation under a veil of anonymity that still challenges researchers today. And this loss of traceability is precisely what fuels fascination and value, because uncertainty creates mystery, and mystery attracts both collectors and investors willing to pay extraordinary sums for coins that defy complete explanation. And as the timeline moves into the late 1970s, the 1977 and 1978 no-mint mark cents reveal another critical shift, a period when copper prices were rising sharply, forcing the mint to rethink the future of the cent while still producing billions of coins using aging presses and overworked dies, resulting in a surge of doubled die varieties, dramatic cuts, off-center strikes with full dates, rotated dies, and wrong planchet errors that reflect a system under strain. And when these errors appear in high-grade condition, they become exponentially rarer. Because survival is just as important as creation, and many of the most valuable examples known today survived only because they were pulled aside by observant individuals or stored away unknowingly in collections, jars, and envelopes for decades, untouched by circulation. And then the story intensifies as it approaches the early 1980s, with the 1980 and 1981 no-mint mark cents representing the final calm before one of the most significant compositional changes in U.S. coinage history. A moment when bronze cents were nearing the end of their dominance, and copper-plated zinc was waiting just around the corner, and during this preparatory phase the Philadelphia Mint was quietly experimenting with materials, planchets, striking pressures, and die preparation methods, creating conditions ripe for transitional errors, undocumented alloy anomalies, and highly unusual strikes that fall outside standard specifications. And when such coins are authenticated through metallurgical testing and die analysis, they become objects of immense importance because they challenge official records and expand what historians believe was possible during these years. And when you consider these 6 coins together, what emerges is not coincidence but continuity, a recurring cycle in which intense production demands, cost pressures, and human imperfection repeatedly intersect to create rare artifacts. And collectors who understand this broader context do not see these pennies as random flukes, but as connected evidence of systemic stress points within the mint, and this understanding drives value. Because sophisticated buyers are not just purchasing metal, they are purchasing insight, narrative, and exclusivity, and when multiple coins from this group are assembled into a single collection, the combined value is not merely additive but multiplicative, because such a set tells a complete story of transformation across 2 decades, from manual mint mark punching and hub transitions to mint mark removal, to late-stage bronze experimentation and the brink of compositional change. And this is why elite collectors and private institutions compete so fiercely for top-tier examples from these years. Because owning one is impressive, but owning several creates authority, credibility, and prestige within the numismatic world, and the market reflects this reality, with record-setting prices achieved not only at public auctions but also in private transactions where values are whispered rather than announced. And as time continues to pass, the opportunity to discover new examples from these years diminishes steadily, because copper cents are disappearing from circulation, collections are being consolidated, and known specimens are being locked away for long-term preservation, shrinking the available supply while global interest continues to grow through online platforms and social media. And this imbalance ensures that demand will remain strong, particularly for coins that combine multiple errors, pristine condition, and verified provenance. And when people ask how a group of pennies could collectively represent tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars in value, the answer lies not in face value but in context, rarity, and human behavior, because people are drawn to stories of overlooked treasure, to proof that extraordinary outcomes can arise from ordinary beginnings, and these 6 coins embody that idea perfectly, standing as quiet reminders that history often hides its greatest surprises in plain sight, waiting patiently for someone to slow down, look closely, and recognize that what appears insignificant at first glance can, under the right circumstances, become priceless.